Good afternoon. Good to see all of you. I guess when I thought about how I might approach this climate change thing, I thought about how we see climate change, and I think we'll all agree that there is climate change. It's been there forever, and climate is going to change. But we have climate change that happens in one year, where you have a drought in the spring and maybe a flood in the fall, and I think probably a lot of you can relate to that. But also, where are we at in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? So two of those kind of things. And when I look at it, there's three things that I want to manage on my farm with regard to climate change. There's people, there's the land, and there's the finances. Okay, so is there anything that I or we can do to deal with climate change? So my answer is absolutely yes, there is. Be proactive. So have a plan, have a written goal, know what's really important. When we took holistic management, we talked about a drought and a drought plan. And the most important thing to do in a drought is to keep your people healthy. So know what's important. It makes it easier to make better decisions. Risk management through enterprise mix. So if you only have one enterprise on your farm, maybe two, you're obviously at more risk. For us, we have 16, which is probably more than we need or more than enough, but just to be diversified helps to mitigate that risk. And there is going to be risk. As we see, I mean, there's still crop in the field. There's financial problems. There's seeding next year's crop, those kind of things. Build resilience into our farms. So have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C with a crop. And for us, our plans come because we have livestock. It helps to build resilience into our farm. Be a low input producer. Mimic nature. Have a drought plan, have a flood plan. Last year we had a dry spring and I pulled out my drought plan for our livestock. We didn't have to use it, but I know people who did use their drought plan. Flood plan next spring. It's wet here. I know we're not in the same situation, but even to have a bit of a plan, you feel more in control of things. You are able to make better decisions. And apply soil health building principles. And I say it again, apply soil health building principles, because that's going to help us and everyone to mitigate climate change. And not just what's happening on our farm, but to help us to be part of the solution in the bigger picture, the global picture. And just to plan, manage, monitor, and repeat, just to continue with that process. We've all seen this slide probably, and I just show it to emphasize the fact that even next year, 60% of the industrial ag kind of sector, the inputs will be financed. To me, that's not a real great business plan. And if we get climate catastrophes, whatever you want to call them, that can put us in a real tough spot. And the thing is, you want to not only survive the year to play the game again next year, but you know, it's the future, it's the next generation. So this helps us to understand the risk, and that blue is the risk. Okay, so here's a picture. On the left, well, same land, obviously, same rainfall, different management, different outcomes. So the land on the left has been managed with holistic management. The land on the right hasn't been. So the rancher on the right is turning his land into a desert. He's going out to look for more land to graze cows. The rancher on the left has a healthy ecosystem, and they're out looking for cows to graze the grass they're producing. Here's another picture, same kind of example. On the left, that's the same stream. On the left, holistically managed land. You can see what's happening there. Land on the right, not. Now, I don't know if you can read that or not, but it says 150% increase in livestock numbers on the land on the left. So the land on the left, how much more carbon are we sequestering? How many more ecological goods and services are we providing? How much more profitable is that land? How much more resilient is that land? So Joel Salatin did some numbers, and he figured that if the forage production was increased by 30% in the United States, we'd have enough forage to grass finish all the cattle in the United States. You wouldn't need feedlots. So when you look at that, on that picture on the left, is that more climate friendly than a feedlot? The land on the right, the rancher there can run 100 cows. On the left, 250. This is a picture from our own farm on the right. That's our land. On the left, across the road, that's our neighbor's land. So the difference, management. We manage ours regeneratively. The left is basically wheat and canola. So what happened there, overnight, we got 2 inches of rain, thunderstorm rolls through, and there's the result. So we've flood-proofed our land, and we've also drought-proofed it as well, because that water is infiltrated into our land, that rainfall. The rainfall is effective. It's there for future crops. On the left, the water is actually a liability. First part of a healthy water cycle is to cover the ground, no bare soil. So this is a picture of our land. This picture was taken in mid-November a few years ago, and we just have a thatch there that's going to protect. It's soil armor. It's going to protect the soil. There are a couple neat things about that picture. We have living roots. We photosynthesize usually on a lot of our land, depending on snow and all the rest of it, spring, but probably 210 days a year on our grain land. Here's an example of having a bunch of legumes. There's alfalfa, red clover, hairy vetch. There's some ryegrass in there, some winter triticale. So we're building soil health in the middle of November. The other good thing, I'm all into the cheap and easy model of farming. So the other thing there is we never seeded any of that. We're building a seed bank on the land so that this kind of stuff just kind of grows. Here's a picture of soil structure. So on the left, we bought a quarter section of land, wheat, canola, high synthetics, and there's the result of the soil. Very plated, unhealthy kind of soils. On the right is our land that we farmed in a regenerative manner, and we're trying to turn the land on the left to the land on the right, hopefully in 3 to 5 years. It doesn't take forever to do this, so it's just a management thing. In the meantime, we're turning that land, as you can see on the right, into a sponge, highly aggregated, keep a thatch. Water infiltration is much better, obviously. And water infiltration time. So this was just part of a study we're in, or a project, and we had these times we did water infiltration. The thing is that's interesting, we had a point 12 where we were kind of in between 2 sloughs that we had just tried to get through a bunch of times over the wet years with equipment, and it turned it into a highway. I don't think you could have gotten stuck there. And obviously, poor water infiltration. The scary thing is that on most of the other farms that are involved in this project, it was very rare to have a measurement time of less than 10 minutes for water infiltration. So the solution that a lot of people have in our area is to ditch the water away, but it's not really a water problem, it's a water infiltration problem. It's a soil health problem. And benefits of healthy roots. again, as we get into maybe some dry times with regard to climate change, maybe it's hotter than usual, whatever the case, you want roots that can go down into the soil and access nutrients, access water. So in the middle, we have a picture of a canola root from our farm. So that root is going straight down, very healthy plant, soil stuck to the root. On the left, we have a plant from an industrial wheat canola rotation, and you can see how the hard pan has turned that root and it's just going to the side, so it cannot access the water, the nutrients. It's expending energy to try and drill down through that hard pan, and in the meantime, it's allowing disease, insects to attack it, and it's not building yield. It's just expending energy trying to get through that hard pan. And then just on the right, some more pictures of healthy roots that go down instead of sideways. So here are the principles that we use to make our soil healthy. Mimic nature. You know, this system was designed to work even without us. So on the right, we have a picture of native prairie pasture that we have on our farm. And if we just do what we have there, it's gonna work. It worked for forever. So we're just gonna mimic that. Keep the soil covered, plan for diversity. You know, there's probably 40, 50 different species there in that native prairie. And diversity begets diversity. So if you have diversity above the ground, then you're gonna have it below the ground. And the types of roots and the biology, the microbiology, and the insects and the animals that are on that land limit soil disturbance, whether it be chemical or tillage, and I believe both are detrimental to soil health. Keep plants growing and photosynthesizing for as long as possible. So when you're doing that, you're feeding the microbes, you're expanding their population, and you're just building soil. So as long as you can do that, you'll be building soil and incorporate livestock into your farm. So, you know, we farm the Great Plains of North America, and that was designed to function with a grazing animal, just like every other grassland in the world. If we remove that grazing animal out of that ecosystem, I don't think it should be any surprise that we're gonna have some detrimental effects. So just incorporating livestock on your farm is huge. Not saying you can't have soil health without livestock, but I don't think you can ever attain the level of soil health that you can if you have livestock. So for us, you know, because we're diversified, we have options. So in 2020, we're gonna look at all our options, and for us, probably grazing longer and including forages in our rotation even more and using them for the cattle is gonna be the direction we're gonna go. We don't know what 2020 is gonna bring, of course, but if we plan ahead and make some decisions, no matter what the climate does, we're probably in a better position than if we didn't plan. So we're gonna build soil health with the cattle and our rotations. Sometimes you can have your cake and eat it too. So with intercropping, we do a fair bit of oats and peas because it's very versatile. We can graze that, we can green feed it, we can chop it for silage, we can combine it, and fortunately, we've always combined it. We haven't run short of grazing, or we haven't run short of feed. So we just combine it. When we do combine it, we will chaff pile, gather all the straw and chaff behind the combine, and then winter graze it. So when you look at that, as far as burning diesel to feed, because we do burn diesel to feed, but if we can do more of this kind of stuff, when we chaff pile, it's no extra diesel. All we do is drive out in the field with a truck and feed them some pellets, and that's what they do. We move them every 3 days versus running a lot of diesel to make feed and then running a lot of diesel to maybe feed it out. So our carbon footprint and our expense is a lot less when we do this. And above there, that caption, we can feed all the cows in Canada if we fed crop residue. We wouldn't have to make feed. This is an example of our cover crop blend. It was 2018's blend. We tweak it every year just to try some different stuff. But the biggest thing is we build a lot of diversity into there. Usually we have 15 to 20 species. And we do that because some like hot, some like dry, some like cool, some like wet. If I have 15, 20 species, something's gonna grow. So it's just a matter of risk management. We're building diversity into that system, and by doing that, soil health, and we're making ourselves more resilient against climate change. Picture on the left, that's what it looks like when it grows up. So that's probably beginning of August, first half of August. We fence it off with the quad with some temporary fence, and we typically move cows every day. So on the right, you'll see where they grazed, and that's a matter of building up a thatch, manuring it. The next day, they move. So most of that, after we seed it, is done just with a quad and people. Now the second year, we build into that mix when we design it, that cover crop mix that I showed you. We put a lot of biannuals, so like the sweet clover and a number of other species, and we just do that so that the second year is just gonna come. So we like doing that because some years it can be dry and it's hard to establish a mix. This way it's already established, it just has to grow. And it gives us lots of options in our second year. So whether we need feed, whether we need grazing, whatever we need, or both, we're able to choose that. So that's just a picture of our cows grazing sweet clover. And there's a list of the species that we have persisting into that second year. So there's a nice polyculture in there. There's about 8 or 9 species that are gonna persist. And basically we're gonna move the cows through, build up a thatch, build fertility, soil health, and then the next year we go in and we'll grow a grain crop typically. This last year we were getting short on feed. So what we did is we silaged it off. But I wanted to get cows out there because of the soil health aspect of it and the extra grazing in the fall. So we swathed it a little bit higher, probably 10 inches high, allowed a lot of leaf to be left behind it. And we got some moisture and it grew back. So in the end, I got 100 grazing days per acre, which is outstanding for our area and our farm. It doesn't always work out that well, but we got 100 grazing days per acre just after we took the silage crop off, plus a bunch of soil health. So again, we had that resilience built into our farm. And the thing is, it can be dry, but it's gonna rain. Eventually it's gonna rain. And if you're set up to capitalize on things when it does rain, we got 100 grazing days per acre after that. This is just a picture. When we started into this, Gabe Brown was someone who gave me lots of good advice, and I got to know some of the Burleigh County people before YouTube, and you could YouTube all this stuff. But I said, this is fine, this works down at Bismarck with those people, but I gotta prove it to myself. So this is just a benchmark. So on the left, we benchmarked 70 acres, intensively soil tested it. Organic matter was 4.3%. After 5 years of our management, which had about 3 years of polyculture, cows grazing, and a couple grain years in there, we went back and retested it. And we had built 1% organic matter. So we were at 5.3% at that point. So 1% organic matter in 5 years. Knowing what we know now, and if we have good growing conditions, I think that's attainable in maybe even as little as 3 years for us. 1% organic matter. There's about $650 worth of plant available nutrients that are liberated from the soil, not added in, but liberated. And as well, the water holding capacity, 27,000 gallons extra with 1% organic matter increase. So that's the same amount as an inch of rain per acre. So we're an inch of rain ahead now than we were before with the increase in organic matter. So again, resilience and profitability built in there. And this is just another soil test we did. It's hard to see. Nutrient value is 112.77. Those are plant available nutrients. So we have $112 worth of plant available nutrients there for the next crop. So when I get a crop recommendation, and again, it's hard to see, but 50 bushels an acre of hard red spring wheat, 0 nitrogen. For 40 bushels an acre of canola, I need 10 pounds of nitrogen. So that makes me quite profitable. And as well, I'm not burning a lot of fossil fuels to get my nitrogen. So again, you look at it in the context of climate change, I'm resilient and I'm part of the solution, not part of the problem. And basically it's management that got us that. So in the end, I bring us back to where we started, which is there anything we can do about climate change? Well, absolutely yes, we can. Couple other things I added to this list. One that we can do on a personal kind of level is communicate with government. We as agriculture producers, especially if we're using regenerative agri principles, is we can sequester a lot of carbon. We can fix this thing. So the numbers, if you look at them, a 2% increase in organic matter over the land globally, on farmland globally, can take all of the excess CO2, the carbon out of the atmosphere and put us back to the levels before things started heating up. So government needs to know that. We can reduce what we use with regard to fossil fuels. There's all these wonderful, great things. And we need to communicate that because it seems like we're focused on emissions, cutting emissions, and we're not talking about sequestering more carbon. And I think in the end, you know, sometimes we just have to accept that we can only do so much. And how you get to that point, whether it's, you know, through faith or meditation or whatever you want to use, it's a mental health thing too. And just to be healthy and to get a peace about this, but know that there's so much that we can do, I think is empowering. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Any questions? Yep.
My voice is gone. What do you use for a drill, Gary, for seeding through that cover crop layer the next year in your cash crop?
It depends. We'll just use like a 3/4 inch opener, like a hoe drill kind of online packing. When you get grazing more mature sweet clover, you end up with thick thatches. So then we have a little John Deere 750 single disc to slice through that. And we just started doing that, but that's pretty amazing with the weed control that you get from the thatch, the fertility, the moisture. I mean, it works great. Yeah.
You mentioned trying to convince government about the goodness of what you're doing. I think government is run by like 80% of urban people. You know, 80% of our population say urban. We need to start convincing them as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's both, I guess. You know, helping to build relationships and educate consumers, absolutely, 100%. But, you know, it's a bigger picture too. It's not just climate change, it's health, it's nutrient density of food, it's healthy food, it's all those kind of things. So yeah, we have to build all the positive relationships we can. But the thing is, politicians can drive this thing. So if all they have to do is incentivize these better management practices, regenerative management practices, like we're all here and we understand this and we're the leaders kind of in this, but we're by far the minority of farmers. So all government has to do is incentivize this. And, you know, when I look at the carbon on my farm that I'm sequestering, if I can sell that even, and there's places you can sell it, you know, there's companies that are buying carbon now, but, you know, I can do at least, I think, at current rates, 30, 40 bucks an acre of carbon credits. So you just plug that into your farm and see how much extra money you get. For me, I'm not doing anything different. I'm doing the management anyway. But for any, if you got a 4,000 acre farm, that's, you know, $120,000, $150,000. So if you show that to an industrial farmer, I think they're going to get pretty interested, especially with the current economic situation in the ag sector. So government can do a few little things and have this thing take right off.
Well, thank you very much for coming to speak with
Thank
us
you.
today. Appreciate it.